The second reading is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 17 to 22. It's about the rich young man. As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. "Good teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments: do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false testimony, do not defraud, honour your father and mother." "Teacher," he declared, "all these I have kept since I was a boy." Jesus looked at him and loved him. "One thing you lack," he said. "Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me." This is the word of the Lord.
It's about the power of choice. And I preached this sermon earlier in the month over at Doreen as my stint filling in there for 3 weeks. And I went to print it out on Saturday morning and the printer ran out of ink. So I only got a few lines of the sermon on the page. So down to the newsagents, bought new ink and printed it. Lena teaches Chinese at U3A on a Tuesday. So being thrifty, she turned my paper over the other way with lines of my sermon on and printed her notes to hand out for the class. I went down at 4 o'clock to help Lena pack up. And 2 of the people out of the class came out and said to me, "That sermon on the back of that paper, can we have a copy of it? Because it spoke to them." So you just never know what will happen. So in the first Bible reading today, the Israelites were given a question by Joshua. Joshua made that question to answer very, very easy because he led by example. I call it a great sign of leadership. I've actually used that when I spoke about leadership and what a leader should do. The answer said, "But for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." The second reading we call the rich young ruler. And he too had a choice to follow what he should make, and it should have been easy for him. And the verse 22 that Brian missed out in some readings of the gospel said he left saddened and grieved. He just couldn't make that choice. Another comparison between the two stories is the gods in Joshua's time were idols and the gods of the Amorites, or those out of Egypt. But by the time the gospel reading came about, the God of the people had become money. And it sounds just a bit like today. The Bible has many decisions in it to make, but and some of them were easy to decide because the leaders gave them great leadership and guidance. Some people followed and others didn't and paid for their consequences. Ray, we have our preachers meeting, when he puts free choice down and not a Bible passage or something, I normally talk something from my heart, and that's around choice. Today's talk's from a number of conversations from the office. My many years of senior leadership at Telstra, and also from that table outside Cafe Mary Rose in Yarra Junction. The look of horror on a couple of faces. No, I'm not going to mention any names or anything that happened at that cafe, but just what it was about. But people that come and talk to me, over 75% around 75% of the people are scared of choice. Many people talk to me about cancer treatment, why this happens, why that happens, but it also gets back to choice. I answered one person one day after they'd said, I wish I knew why this happened. And then they would know. I said, yes, you would know. But does it really matter? Many questions and comments made to me there don't really matter. What if God sent an angel to talk with you and said, I see you here flapping around Millgrove, doing nothing, going nowhere, and then you want to know why this happened and that happened. And the angel said, I'll tell you why, because it did. What do you do then? Still no good to you. So in preparation for today, I watched a Billy Graham sermon on the same topic. I've taken two things out of that sermon. The first one was the Bible reading from Joshua, and the second is a quote that Billy Graham had: if you don't make a decision, then time will make it for you, and time will always side against you. People often ask me too, what's the purpose of life? They get a shock when I answer them and say, this life is preparation for the next. God wants you to practice on earth here what you'll do for eternity. I like reading, and C.S. Lewis, and he's best known for the Chronicles of Narnia, wrote, there are two kinds of people, those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God will say, all right then, have it your own way. But sadly, many people will have to suffer eternity without God because they choose to live without him here on earth. We were made by God and for God. Until people figure out that, life isn't going to make much sense. In Matthew 25 and starting at verse 31, there's a paragraph called the final judgment. In verse 46 it says, these then will be sent off for eternal punishment, but the righteous will go on for eternal life. Billy Graham in another sermon said that the strongest principle of life and blessing lies in our choice. Every day each of us is faced with numerous choices. God has given us the power of choice. Our destiny is our choice. See, your destiny is your choice. Many people that talk to me don't understand what big choices and little choices are. Most people think big choice is buying a car, a house, but in reality they're the small choices of life. The big choices are where your heart says yes, but your head says the opposite. They become the big choices in your life. I'm going to talk about a few choices we should make. The first choice you should make in your life is to live an integral life. That's a life based on our integrity. It's not always easy to act with integrity, but that's not the point. Integrity isn't about doing what's easy, it's about doing what's right. And if you're still looking to build your own life compass, I'll give you 5 tips to live with integrity. The first one is find your values, make a conscious decision in line with your values, strive to be honest with yourself and others, embrace a continuous learning and growth mindset, and build a social network of integrity. As I said before, integrity isn't about doing what's easy, it's all about doing what is right. However, when you make a conscious decision to live a life with honesty and integrity, you'll find life easier to navigate. because you have your own internal compass of values and principles to guide you. Albert Einstein, best known for developing that theory of relativity that I still don't understand, called E equals MC squared, said, God didn't create evil, just as darkness is the absence of light, evil is the absence of God. Some people today do not wish to accept responsibility of their actions. They blame society, upbringing, government, circumstances. To me, I don't think they should blame. It's their decisions that are to blame. Adam sinned in a perfect world, under perfect circumstances. And we can't always blame somebody else. We must accept the blame ourselves for our choices. When God commanded Adam not to take of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he was showing him what choice he should make. God wanted him to choose life and not death. God gave those choices many times to the Israelites. One that stood out to me was in Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 19. It reads, I've set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose the life that both you and your descendants may live. It's just the same as the Bible reading today said. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Many Bible verses tell us what we should to do, but the choice is ours. And we still struggle with that choice. We procrastinate and let time make the choice for us. Aristotle is quoted as saying, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, it's a habit. So the reverse is true. If we decide not to live an integral, God-filled life, it becomes a habit. So do we live a life of integrity based on what we believe? Or do you find it difficult that have of your actions and your choices don't align with what you believe in? The second point I want to pass on is I will not pass on my suffering, but only my wisdom. I sit at the cafe and hear all about people's suffering and woe. Many pass on their suffering. That's all they want to talk about. My head hurts, my back aches, my sore shoulder, my car needs fixing, I need more money. I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this person, I hate them. People become what I see and think a prophet of doom would look like. So, do you pass on your wisdom or do you pass on your suffering? Are you a prophet of doom or wisdom that you've gained through your faith and in life? The good things that have happened in your life, do we choose wisdom or woe? Third thing I'll talk about is the choice of our words. We should choose words wisely. The language of many is quite toxic. And I don't think about swearing or taking God's name in vain. I'm talking about the language they use and the words they choose. They're toxic not only to themselves, but to the others they use them in. In the book, Why People Do Not Heal, studies from Harvard show that people with a toxic vocabulary struggle to heal, both physically and mentally, and to get on with life. The toxicity of language they use is not only toxic to others, but more toxic and poisonous to themselves. And when they use a toxic word, their body, heart and mind know it. So I'm going to play a little mind game here. So I want you to think about a word you give me that you'll never use again. A word where everything about that word is erased from your mind. And I'll use an example. Would you give me pink? I see no one wearing pink today. Everything pink is erased from your mind. You'll never see it. You'll never wear it. It's not in your vocabulary. I want you just to think about it for a few seconds. Now I want you to think about the reverse of this and come from it the other way. There are 5 words for a start and many more that we should never use. And the 5 top words are hate, blame, deserve, guilt, and failure. Hate is the most toxic word there is, or it's believed to be. I hate you is one of the most toxic things people say. Kids learn it in the playground and they start to use it. Then it goes with them through adulthood if they let it. When you're saying, I hate you, someone's probably thinking or saying that about you. As I said, the study of toxic words report that I hate you is the most toxic word. It's also the most toxic word for a person saying it as the listener. So use your power of choice and rid the word hate from your everyday vocabulary. The next one's Ray's favourite. I blame them. I came in this morning and as I walked in, the first thing Ray said to me is, I blame you. And pointed his finger at me, I blame you. I told you I'd get it back at you for it, Ray. I often hear that, and today was a perfect example. He actually has said it 3 times this morning to different people. I blame them, I blame that. See, it's easy to blame someone or something than take responsibility for ourselves. If you want to read a real good story about the blame game, read Genesis chapter 3. And I'll start at verse 11, just after God calls out to Adam and Eve. And he said, who told you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? And Adam said, that woman you put here with me gave it to me, and I ate it. Then the Lord said to Eve, what have you done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate it. See, Adam blamed Eve firstly, then she blamed God. Then when Eve was asked about it, she just straight away blamed the serpent. Whilst they don't use the word blame, they certainly did blame. So use your power of choice to remove blame from your actions and your vocabulary. I hear that all the time, and this morning was a perfect example of it. Thank you, Ray.
I love you, Mark.
I actually do love you too. Now's probably the right time to tell you another story about Geelong. Geelong players at about halfway through the fourth quarter, when they were a few goals down, were really found wanting to go back to Sleepy Hollow, Geelong. Deserve is another that people say when something bad happens to someone. They deserve that. Then they say, I deserve more than this. What makes us feel so entitled to deserve more? We are owed nothing, but we all owe a debt to society. God owes us nothing, but we owe a debt to God. Use your power of choice to remove deserve from your vocabulary. If you think taking a word out of your vocabulary is hard, then think of the vegans and vegetarians that woke up one day and said, I'm never going to eat meat again. They just take it out of their diet. So remove those words from your vocabulary. The next thing I'll talk about is taking risk. And the first thing I'm going to do is talk about my pet hate, procrastination. People who procrastinate eventually hit regret. They make comments like, if only, I wish I had, I should have, I could have. Often call these peoples the couldas, the shouldas and wouldas of the world, but they didn't make a decision. There are many Mr. and Mrs. couldas, shouldas and wouldas everywhere in the world. Don't end up one. Don't forget, take the risk and make the decision. Use your power of choice. And in the words of Billy Graham, you have choices, but you need to make a decision. And if you procrastinate long enough, time will make it for you. And mostly, it's the path you didn't want to take. This relates a little bit to the children's story this morning, but I'm going to use Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist, psychologist, philosopher, but most of all, a Holocaust survivor. He wrote a book called Man's Search of Meaning. The book sold 12 million copies. It's in 24 languages. And New York Times has the book on its 10 most influential books of the 20th century. In the book, he describes two brothers. Two brothers he'd met in the concentration camp. They were in the same concentration camp under the Nazis. One he describes as a saint, and the other he describes as a swine of a man. Frankl then tells the reason why. He said, each man has within him the power to choose how he react given any situation. The greatest mistake that people make is make decisions without the counsel of God. We all continually make decisions without the counsel of God. So this leads me to what the Bible has more about decisions, and Proverbs has a fair bit on the subject. Proverbs 2:6 says, for the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. And the writer of Proverbs continually over and over warns us about depending on man's wisdom rather than seeking God's wisdom when making decisions. Again in Proverbs 28:26 he says, he who trusts himself is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom is kept safe. Proverbs 12:15 says, fools think their way is right, but the wise listen to others. And then finally from Proverbs 11, verse 14, where there is no guidance, the people fall, but where there is an abundance of counsellors, there is victory. There are moments in our lives when we find ourselves at the crossroads. The choices we make can define the rest of our days. There may be times we make choices that cause our paths to become tough, confusing, even uncertain at times. Our paths are like a series of hills and valleys. There is never a balance. When this happens, we should stop, examine the choices we have made that have taken us down the path. We should evaluate those choices, identify alternatives or new choices that bring us back onto the true path, that one true path we originally created. Once again, we shape our lives by the choices we make. I spoke earlier about big decisions and small decisions. But now's the time to make a decision, a big decision. Do we choose to live that Christ-centred, integral life? A life where we choose our words wisely, remove those negative words and hurtful words from our vocabulary. A life where we take risks for the Lord, and a life where we pass on our wisdom, God's wisdom, to those we meet. A time where we heed the advice from Joshua and Jesus and make that choice. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Now is that time to make the decision. If you don't make a decision, then time will make it for you. Time will side against you, and you may never get another chance, but now is the time to choose who you will serve. And if you've never made that decision to serve the Lord and ask God into your life, make that decision, say a short prayer to God, and have a chat with Ray afterwards, because nothing would please Ray more than have someone come up to him to say, I want to make that decision in my life. Thank you.